Hello, everyone. Anything to anybody?
Hello. So that's where I see Bitcoin. This might protect me. I mean, hey, if Bitcoin does track like it's tracked over the last 10 years, you'd be crazy not to own some. The downside of not owning it is probably greater than the downside of owning it. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Same thing with silver and gold.
I would agree as well.
Because it's not your entire, for somebody who says, well, I'm going to put everything I own into my house. Well, as a lot of people do, that is a bet. That is a bet. You're maintaining that your resources are going to be maintained, that you can control and keep your house. Well, what if your property taxes go to $30,000 a month? That will never happen. What the hell are you giving me that example for? How do you know it's not going to happen? Because you live in the United States. You earn dollars. The government yeah, I mean, the federal government can print, but your local government, your state government, they can't print money. They only make money when they take it from you. Just like all governments. Governments only make by robbing Peter to pay Paul. That's it. All these government workers, they produce zero. Nothing. If you got rid of all government workers, all of us would be better off. Would be richer without all these government workers. Now, the government worker would actually have to go find a productive job because they're not productive. Now, if you call production, hey, Dave, I want you to take that rock and move it over to that side of the room and then move it back and then move it over there again. If you call that production, then that's fine. Then that's production. But that's what government workers are. They move the rocks from one side to another, and they collect a paycheck. They do nothing that benefits society. Society would always find a way to solve a problem or a need if one existed. Government will always screw that up. But everybody always goes to government.
I got to believe they'll debate you tooth and nail on that one.
They can debate, but they'll lose. History. Governments always create problems. They don't solve problems. And that's why we are in the pickle we are in. Because our society, after World War II, we thought we were the greatest generation and nothing we can do is wrong. Let's go to guns and butter. Let's go kick the Vietnamese ass. Let's go kick the Koreans' ass, the Chinese ass, the Russians' ass. And let's give all these people in the inner cities all this welfare. And let's go to abortion and this and that. How's that worked out?
Yeah, no argument, dude. You're talking to a simpleton.
So I'll leave it before I forget. If anybody has specific questions about investments, whatever, Dan and I can give you our opinions. That's all they are, is opinions based on our experience and based on what we see. So if we decide to go long copper or short copper, that is what we see right now. In the future, if you can hold on long enough, unless society comes apart, copper, gold, silver, oil, they're all going higher. They have to. And by higher, I mean it's going to protect your wealth. So if you say I'm going to take 1% of my wealth and I'm going to take that 1% and I'm going to put it in silver coins, or I'm going to put it into whatever you want to call it. Those things that the world are going to need are going to maintain their value. And that's where, see, we don't know the future. So the US dollar, there's no guarantee there's going to be a US dollar in 50 years as it is now. I mean, history will say that every fiat currency that's ever been existed has failed. 100%. Except the ones being used today. So so whether it takes 50 years or 100 years or 1,000 years, it's going to fail. Now, for those of us who
Yeah, I mean, if you know your history, that's Dave's right. You could debate it and argue it all day long because it's not what you want to hear. That's fine, but that's not logical or rational, is it? History has shown us that every fiat currency in the history of the world, not that I want to see this happen with the dollar, I don't, but history has shown us that they've all eventually failed and hence gone to zero. And so
Maybe not
the
in our
powers that
lifetime.
be, they know
And
this. The power they
that's been
know
the
this, and that's
attitude of the
why we are
boomer. And the
switching to a
reason
free
and the
financial system.
reason we're there is because the boomers know this, but they don't care. Because the boomers have always known that it's not going to be in their lifetime. And they don't
100%.
care. And they don't care.
True.
That's
That's
why
true.
our country is where it is, because they sold out the future for their present. And that's where we have to come back. At some point, if we want our country, the United States, our society to flourish, it's going to take sacrifice and pain. It means we're going to have to sacrifice for the future. Or there's not going to be a future. And unfortunately, the boomers decided that they were more important than their kids and their grandkids. That's what actions have shown. So
Um, that's a tough pill again, buddy, to swallow. I mean, that's a bold statement you're making. Devil's
it's
advocate. They will fight you. The average boomer will fight you fucking tooth and nail on that. Tooth and nail. They'll debate you. They'll rip you a new one. How dare you? You're wrong.
hey, the truth hurts, doesn't it? Truth hurts. And so the
I hear
point
you.
is, Dan, is you and I are swinging. We might strike out. We might lose. There's, like Teddy Roosevelt said, the man in the ring. There's no guarantee of victory when you step in that ring. Two men enter, one man leaves.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's not at that level, even in sports terms, even in combat sports terms, one man wins, one man loses. Whatever analogy you want to
That's the
use, it's that
that's the
that
real
simple.
that's the real world. That's the real world. And what's happening in the rest of the world is the rest of the world has been in the slave class for so long. With technology, they now have a level playing ground. Now, if your kid doesn't speak Mandarin, if your kid can't do certain things that these other people can, that's what's happening. All these jobs, all these technologies are just the silver. The silver will just go east. The jobs will just go east. But what about my boy? What about my boy? Well, your boy can't compete with Yao Ming.
Yeah, because Yao Ming, that you want to make fun of, or
He's 6'10", or
yeah,
7 feet.
or Sammy Gupta in India. I'm just thinking of the name. Whatever the names are.
Right, right.
Um, you know, um,
Hello,
they
my name is
deserve
Don.
credit. You
They
know,
what?
they're going to study 22 hours a day, guys. They're going to work 75 hours, 80 hours a week. They're going to get the 17 certifications, what it takes, and speak 3 languages. Um, you can make fun of them, but you take the Indians, for example, in India, even the Russians, and the Chinese. You look at a lot of their videos and photos they send around. One thing you see in common, particularly in India, family nucleus is in place. You see a mother, a father, and 2 kids. You don't see that in the West. In the
And
West,
then,
you see
yeah.
Johnny with purple hair and a nose ring in his own room, eating Doritos. Out of it, can't do basic math, and a single parent in the house. That's what you see. Um, they have a family unit intact. They have a structure in place. They have rigor in place. Their kids outstudy our kids, whether you like it or not. They kick our ass. I know because I was in technology for 25 years. I was an engineer for 15. I was on engineering teams, literally 12 or 15 of us, 2 white guys on the engineering team. This was 20 years ago. Everybody else was Chinese, Indian, Pakistani, and Russian. And there'd be 2 white guys. We were the minorities. And this was 20 years ago, building networks, building data centers, TCP/IP, hexadecimal math, you name it, right? A lot of the white kids didn't want to do it. You had a couple of white geeks that were willing to do it. We were the minorities, okay, and still are. These kids are eating our lunch. They're eating your kids'
Well,
lunch.
it
You want to
worked
own up?
because the quote unquote
Yeah.
white
We
man
don't own up to it.
controlled the world.
I'm not good at math. I don't like math. Well, guess what, Skippy? The whole world revolves around math. You have a body size in geometry. You have a height, you have a weight, a density. That's called math. Okay. You buy things, don't you? You got to make change. That's basic math. Okay. I'm not getting into calculus, integrals, thermodynamics, and drag coefficients, even basic math, guys. Okay. I don't like math. Well, you survive on math. Your whole world is based on math. The car you drive in is based on math. The door you walk through in your house is based on math. Is the door plumb and square? Was it built properly? Or is it leaning to the side like the Tower of Pizza? This is where we're at in America, right? And I can't do that. It's too hard.
Yeah, I'm in
Well,
gender
guess what?
studies. I'm in gender
Guess what?
studies.
The Russians, the Chinese, and the Indians are doing it. How
Yeah,
come their kids are doing it?
I'm in pre-child education.
Yeah. How come their kids are doing it? There was a thing called American ingenuity when we were the leaders. Okay. And we still are the leaders in a lot of ways. Our technology, I have to say, even our military technology is still ahead. But as a whole, the
But guess
populace
what?
at large,
You don't know what the other
it's
guys have,
waning.
Dan. You don't know
It's
what the other guys
waning.
have.
Well, we do to an extent, but we also know that, to
You
your
don't know
point,
what
the
the Russians
Chinese,
and the Chinese have. You hear like supersonic missiles. We
well,
don't have
well,
those.
I would say they caught up to us in a lot of ways too. So, they're smart people, they're hardworking. That's all I'm trying to say. If we think we're just going to walk around pompously with our gut hanging out eating Doritos and that's as good as we got to get, that's not going to cut it.
It's like anything.
Sorry.
It comes
Sorry.
down to wants and needs. If you are Russia and China or Brazil or Mexico, and all of a sudden you realize that your future depends on you, like North Korea. Why did North Korea insist on developing their
North,
new?
North diarrhea. Sorry.
Yeah, I wouldn't put them down. The thing is, if
You
they
wouldn't
did
put
not,
North Korea down?
what I'm saying is, I've never been there, Dan, so I can't comment.
Okay.
The point I'm making is, if that guy had decided to disband his nuclear technology program, then all of a sudden the rest of the world could kick him around like a piece of shit. Now that he has quote unquote nukes, he's in the discussion. That's my point.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
no, I agree.
China, they just launched their third aircraft carrier. They've never had a blue water navy, never in the history of their. But they realize that the way the world is now, you got to have the stick to back up your talk, because that's what it's the only thing the United States respects. The United States never honors their agreements. Look at the history of our country. Have we ever honored an agreement when we've decided that it doesn't benefit us anymore? So we're going off on a diatribe, and the whole point is anybody awake realizes that it's going to come down to you to protect your own inner circle. It's
100%.
the government and is not going to have your back unless you're in the elite class, like of wealth and power.
No argument.
So if you're doing nothing, then realize that is what you might just end up with. Nothing. And hey,
well, it's
a free country. It's a free, we have free will, free choice. And some people may decide
at the moment it's a free country. Yeah. At the moment. Yeah.
Well, as far as God is concerned, we have free will, free choice. We have a choice in how we decide to act. Whether we believe it or not, we all have a choice. If you decide that you're going to go along with evil and be complicit with it, that is a choice. That's a choice. Because one thing that I'm pretty sure of is we're all here temporarily. And whether you believe in God, whether you don't believe in God or salvation or a paradise or an afterlife, we're all going to find out. And if you made the wrong choice, you may find that you have an eternity. Maybe. Who knows?
That isn't too pleasant.
So, okay, I've been trying to get to this copper trade, Dan. So the bottom line is if you decide that copper is going to go higher, it might take a month, it might take a year, right? Like if you decide to invest in MUX, right? Which is what is the symbol MUX, MUX? What company is that, Dan?
MUX. Yeah.
Yeah, but what's the
That's
company?
McEwen.
McEwen what? Mining.
Well,
it's a mining company.
Mining Inc.
It's a mining company. It's a mining company.
Yeah.
Now, Rob McEwen, he's a very interesting guy. He's very well liked by people in the industry, and he's had a history of huge successes and huge failures. So he's a human being, and I was invested in them for a long time, and then they had a series of devastating accidents in the mines, and then the price of silver and gold got punched down. And he actually pivoted the company where he's now more of a copper company. So if you're buying MUX, it's a play in copper. Now people say, oh, it's also a play in silver and gold. Well, read up on it. I'm pretty sure. Now it's been a while since I've been invested in him. It's been about 6 months, but I thought that they closed or mothballed certain silver gold mines, and that they pretty much have put their eggs into the copper basket, if I remember correctly. So if you invest in MUX, it's a copper play. Now, MUX was at like $4 or $5 or $6 just 6 months ago.
Yeah, no,
right?
now it closed at 11:37 or something Friday night.
What? No.
I told you I sold a put on it about a week and a half ago.
No, I know that. That's why I'm bringing it up because that's something else I wanted to go into is hedging.
I think it's got a gap on it. I think it's going to as high as
but you're basing it on a chart where wow. True. Wow. See, I didn't look at this on Friday. It was $10 last time I looked at MUX. MUX is now up to 11.36. Incredible.
Yeah. It's going to 15 and change, I think. Yeah.
Well,
I don't know when, but.
Well, when you sell a put, all you care about is it happens in your time frame. It's almost like you want the shares now, right? Okay, I was in, and I'll use in a specific trade I had, is the other thing. Now we're pivoting into less philosophical and more into specific actions, because I can only tell you that there's another debate versus holding shares and trading options. There's pros and cons to that. And that would take another hour discussion, and we can't get into that. But if anybody's interested, we can talk about that, Dan. But I think you'd agree that it's a completely different approach when your goal is to own and hold shares, buy and hold, versus trading in and out using options. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, the time frame's different.
Agreed.
I mean, yeah. If you sell a put on MUX saying it's not going to go below this price by this date, well, you're going to know if you're right or wrong in a very short amount of time. Could be 6 months, could be 2 years.
Yeah, but mine is an 11/15 expiration.
I know. And for example, back when the miners were punished back in March, April, I bought a lot of calls on various miners, and one of them was Endeavor that expired yesterday on the 17th of May.
Oh, wow.
And the thing with options is there's sometimes you're given a lot of strike choices, sometimes you're not. With this particular stock, the thing I don't like about it is gives you a $2.50 strike or a $5 strike. Not a lot of room in between on a stock that's trading at $2 or $1.50. So it needs to move, is what I'm saying. It needs to move. It can't lag. So, anyways, I bought it when it was around, I think it was around $1.50, if I remember correctly. And I bought $2.50 calls. Now, if I was wrong, there's a bunch of different ways you can make money just through the movement. If you're right with the move and not a lot of time has elapsed, you make money. But the longer an option, it's called decay. Options decay over time. If you buy them naked, you can hedge yourself where you don't get the same decay. Okay, but that's a whole different topic for another day. So, long story short, Endeavor yesterday, silver yesterday, Endeavor this week was hanging around $3.50. It was ranging between $3.30 and $3.50. And so I was like, do I want to take these shares or do I want to take the money? And because the problem is if I took the shares and I wanted to hedge it with options, we're talking $2.50 or $5 option choices, the strikes. And I couldn't make money hedging it, selling a covered call. So I'd just be holding it. And me personally, right now, I personally do not want to hold any stock right now. Me personally, very little. I would much rather, because there's too many. The stock market could go. I mean, things could collapse tomorrow. Now, if the options collapse, yeah, I'm going to lose money, but I won't lose as much as if the shares collapsed.
I totally agree with you, 100%. This is the type of markets, in my opinion, Amigo. If you can, in and out, in and out.
Yeah, there's just too much risk. Now,
quick hit.
Even with and that's what we're talking about. When you buy physical silver or gold and you put it in your drawer or your safe, it's a different mentality. When you're trading silver shares or silver miner or copper or whatever, or oil, you're now on the clock. The clock matters. If the powers that be, if there's a war tomorrow, like in Gaza, or if there's COVID next month, COVID-2, all of a sudden your investments get punished or you benefit depending on what you're doing. And so that's what we're talking about, is you want to have a certain percent in, but this is where you really need to be nimble. And you really need to, and this is, most people don't want to be bothered doing this. They just want to buy their ETF and watch it go up every year, because they've been basically conditioned that you always buy the dips and things will always go up. And all I'm saying is we could be watching the end of that paradigm. And it only works as long as the U.S. government is allowed to keep printing and keep printing and keep printing,
as long as they
keep printing.
Propping up the market. And what do we mean by propping up the market, guys? They're
Liquidity.
injecting essentially cash or liquidity various ways, right? So without getting into those details, but how do you know this? I mean, if you just look at the quarterly GDP reports, on average, the government's somewhere in, like, I think the 30% range. It's affecting the economy, something like that. 30-40%, something like that.
Government spending, as we alluded to before, is inefficient. So they're having to spend $5 to get $1 benefit in the GDP, basically, GDP growth.
Yeah, it's well past the days of spend $1 for $1 or spend 50 cents for $1. It's like 2 or 3 to 1 or something totally inefficient.
It's like 5 to 1. So you're taking on $5 of debt for $1 of GDP growth.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the exact ratio, but I know it's beyond what you're saying, 1 to 1 and stuff. It's insane. Would you run a household that way, guys?
Well,
Probably not. At least-
you'll only continue doing it, Dan, for one of two reasons. Either you know that you're never going to have to pay that back, or
Good point.
right, or you have to do it, or you collapse. Those are the only two reasons you do it.
That's a great point. Great points. It's a
That's why
combination of
why people are buying their groceries on a credit card and taking it on as debt, because they have to. They have to eat. So why am I mentioning? Well, it's an indication when you see the government, when you see the Federal Reserve, the banks around the world, when you see these people doing this, they're doing it. It's a sign of danger. It doesn't mean happy days are here again, we're going to the moon. It means it's a Ponzi, and all Ponzi's fail. And the minute that they can no longer do this is the minute it falls apart. And it means that if you're holding anything, well, you lose it. If it doesn't transition.
kind of scary.
So I think, like, when I make these trades, I truly look at it as musical chairs. Like NVIDIA, musical chairs. At some point, NVIDIA is going back to like $100. Is it today? No. Is it next week? No. But eventually, because NVIDIA is another Ponzi. And NVIDIA will have competition someday. Just like Apple. Yeah. Apple's another one. Apple, the only reason they're playing financial games. They announced a 100 billion, whatever it was, stock buyback. So what they're doing is they're playing financial games. And Google or Microsoft who just said that they announced a dividend? So now they announced a dividend because, in essence, they're saying that we have determined that we can't reinvest our money into our company and grow the company. So we're going to give it back to shareholders. That's what a dividend means. Or a company makes so much money, they can do both. They can pay for guns and butters for a certain period of time. So all of these are red flags. We are approaching the end. We are approaching the end. Now, the end could mean this year. It could mean in 5 years. Because back in 1970, whatever, when Nixon came out, hey, do your Nixon, Dan.
Nixon? What do I say? I forget. It's been a while.
You can just make it up. My fellow Americans.
I did not lie.
Yeah. We're going off the gold standard temporarily.
I'm taking us off the gold standard.
Temporarily.
August 15th, 1971. We have to do it temporarily.
Because the French bastards want their gold.
Vive la France.
I love France. So
I like the Frenchies. They gave us French fries, didn't they?
Well, you know what? Out of the Western countries.
Liberty, my bad.
Well, listen,
the Lafayette gave us 10,000 troops during the Revolutionary War, and he was well dressed.
The French have historically, when they go, man, they go. They pull out the guillotines and they start chopping off heads, man.
No, the Frenchies don't mess around. They're kind of scary once you piss them off. I mean, they have a lot of character, a lot of style. Great. They're cultural, like my fellow Italians, right? I'm Italian background. They have a lot of style, great dressers, great food.
Have you been to France? Have you been to France?
I haven't, but they're great engineers, great designers. They're smart people, but you're right. They're kind of emotional. When they lose their temper, get the hell out of the way. Because, like Dave said, they're the French Revolution, right?
Well, the France of today is not what the France was just 20 years ago, but we'll leave that at that.
And there's truth to that, too. A lot of countries we're included
United
in that.
States, United
Yeah,
States,
we're
Canada.
included in that mix.
Go to
Yeah.
Canada. Anybody who hasn't been to Canada in 20 years, go. When I went to Toronto, and this was 10 years ago, when I went to
Yes,
Toronto,
yeah.
I thought I was in a foreign country. Well, I was in a
yeah.
foreign country, but I mean, I thought I was like in a third world country.
Trudeau he's such a commie fascist. It's ridiculous, you know. It's
Okay,
beyond
so
ridiculous.
Dan, you wanted to specifically. So right now, do you think there's danger in the markets right now, or do you think it's happy days again?
I'm ambivalent. I cautiously, I think
Because
you can make money, but very
this
cautiously.
could be a head fake right now. Do
Oh yeah,
you think?
yeah.
You know, I mean,
No, here's what I'd say. I got to go in a minute, by
yeah,
the way. But here's what I would
yeah.
say. Oh yeah, no, totally. No. Can you make money in these markets? Yes. It's been very difficult though the last month or two because it's very choppy. I like volatility, but it's choppy as hell,
And the
and a lot
market
of it's small
makers and the
stocks.
market makers have been tightening. So they're
Yeah,
not giving you
yeah,
like
yeah.
the mid price. They're making
Much
you pay full
latitude.
price.
On
Yeah.
some stocks, there's been enough choppiness, latitude to go up and down where you could pull some out, but you've got to be very adept and very skillful at it. It's not for the faint-hearted at all. That's one of my specialties, but it's not easy. Even guys that do it all the time,
Yeah,
it's
Dan,
challenging these days.
you're excellent. You're
Very
much
challenging.
faster.
Never mind the average person that doesn't do it. God bless them. They're probably going to get smoked most of the time. I've gotten smoked on some bad ones, where it just turned on me on a dime, just the floor dropped right out. And you're like, holy crap, didn't see it coming. And that's the market reversal guys driving the bus. They just decided to turn the bus that abruptly. But yeah,
Well,
Dave, to answer your
but
question,
yeah.
uh, proceed with caution. Proceed with caution because the floor could drop out anytime in terms of a big correction. I do think the Dow's going to melt up to 50,000. I've been saying it for 2 or 3 years. We've been talking about it, Dave. It's going to 50,000. It's melting up that way. But once it gets up around there or so, look out below. Exactly when, who knows? But it's going to come down,
Yeah,
man.
do
It's
not
going to come down.
anybody listening, please do not take all your money and do this.
Yeah. No. If you're going to try to make money,
Because
proceed with
the
caution. Yeah.
well, if that's one thing I hear a lot of people saying is, I don't know where to put my money. I don't know where to put my money. Well, the reality is everybody has a different answer to this. And what I tell people is, what do you need? What do you use? I mean, the reality is if you eat a lot of canned beans, go out and buy 1,000 cans of beans.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Those beans might be 5 times the price next year. You just saved yourself X amount of money. Car parts.
That's a good point.
Like I tell people, hey man, if you smoke or if you drink booze, load your basement, man. Load your attic. You think those prices are going down, Dan? Number one, that's where governments tax. That's when governments need taxes. Hey, let's raise the sin taxes. Let's raise the gas taxes. Raise that. Anything that you need and you use, if you put $100 into that, you're not going to lose because at some point you're going to use it as long as it doesn't go bad.
It's a good point.
And
It's
most people, well, let's face it, most people are living hand to mouth. So if you can buy something that you're going to use in 6 months or a year, if you can buy it today and you have the space, put it in your garage, man. Buy the oil for your car, buy the tires for your car, buy the windshield wipers or, the toilet paper. Yeah, everybody, whatever it is, sit down and actually track where you're spending your money for 6 months.
We just had 500 pounds of toilet paper delivered this morning, by the way.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
Well, is it any accident that Starbucks and a lot of these fast food companies are announcing that their guidance is going into the toilet? Because people are just saying, I can't pay $7 for my latte anymore. I can't spend $12 on my Happy Meal. Dan
Yeah.
tries.
Well, what is it? 15 or 20 cities across the country now. The Big Macs, combo meals, or the quarter pounder with fries and a Coke is like $18 now or something.
I have no idea.
Something like
I can
$18.
tell you,
That's a
I
lot of
actually
money. A
listen.
burger, fries, and a Coke at McDonald's, $18.
Listen, I will admit something. I've
That's a
been in
lot of
Mexico.
money.
I've been in and out of Mexico for 10 years, and I've been living here full time for almost 2 years. And I would get like a coffee at McDonald's, and I'd get one of those like cheap ice cream cones occasionally, but I had not had a meal in McDonald's in Mexico in those 10 years. I actually went there last week for the first time ever. And the reason I did is I was curious because, I was reading this stuff about McDonald's, about how prices were going up and how, you know the stories if you've been following this stuff. So I went into the McDonald's on my walk, and they have signs in the McDonald's in Mexico City near me. The prices are like, it was an 89 peso triple deal. So you got a triple cheeseburger, a fry, and a Coke for 89 pesos. And 89 pesos is roughly, it's less than $4.
Wow.
And I was like, holy cow. That compared to what Dan's been telling me about the price of McDonald's. So I actually bought it and I ate it, and it was actually terrible. It was terrible. It's
Wow.
I
believe it.
I hadn't had McDonald's in a couple of years, and I used to think McDonald's was pretty good. I don't think I'll go back there. Even the fries were like, you tasted like they changed their oils. They used to have like natural oils. Now it's synthetic oils, and you can taste it. It's like the French fries taste synthetic now. They didn't even taste
that's
real.
a good point. I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah, I didn't even finish. I finished half the fries and I threw the rest out. And for me, that's saying something, because I almost never throw out food. I really don't like to throw
our
out
generation, especially, guys, being Gen Xers, you can see the white walls on us. We were taught not to throw food out, especially being Yankee New Englanders. I mean, that's like sacrilegious. You don't throw food out.
Yeah. When I was young, you couldn't leave the table until you finished your plate.
Yep. We were raised that way. You
When
all can laugh at us.
when families actually ate together. Most families don't eat together.
Right. That's right. We grew up with the generation, guys, where 5:30, 6 o'clock every night, like clockwork.
Mom
Even
had
my
the meal.
family, we all sat down, mother, father, and kids at the dinner table. That doesn't exist anymore. People don't even know what the hell that is. It's alien.
Yeah.
It's alien.
Yep. Assigned seating too. I always sat in the same chair.
Yeah.
I sat to the left of my father,
Me too.
Where this was always omnipresent. And there was a wall behind me. And I remember one time I was like a ping pong ball. I went boom, 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 boom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The good old days.
Yeah. No,
The
those
good old
were
days.
good days.
You didn't
that's
challenge
cool.
your folks or anything. A shoe went flying by your head.
Oh, yeah. Salt shakers.
Didn't happen. Oh, yeah.
So the days of investing, if we're talking about survival and transitioning, for those people who are just blindly throwing their money every month into this ETF, maybe you should start looking into what is going to protect me now. Because the reality is the future is, none of us own the future. None of us know the future. And what can you put your money into that benefits you immediately rather than speculating? Because anything going into the markets today, anything that you're spending your money on that you are not getting benefit from, everything today as I started the call with Dan, is a speculation today. That will be my argument. Whether it's Bitcoin, silver, copper, or Tesla or Nvidia, it's all a speculation. And how much, I think you have to do some of it because Dan talks about his hurdle rate. It's really a difficult world because now you're trying to survive versus you're trying to be positioned to survive a year from now or 5 years from now, when your income is going down because your job, most people are not keeping up with inflation.
The future is getting poorer. We are being decimated. This is what you have to understand, folks. We're being decimated by the day with the 15, 20%, call it hurdle rate, burn rate, or inflation, whatever, to sound cool. You've got to hit 15% now just to stay abreast, to break even, which means that you really need to be doing 20, 30%. Where are you going to do 20, 30%?
Yeah, especially if you're
Nowhere.
paying taxes on it.
Nowhere. And if you're trading, if you're doing it right, depending on your strategy and using options or whatever, you can do that. If you're doing it right. I mean, if you're getting killed and losing money on every trade, obviously you ain't doing it right. But that's one of the few things I can think of.
Yeah, and for those who are really unsure,
That in sales. If you're going to work for somebody, you might want to consider sales too. I know that's sacrilegious. The problem is either you're good at it or you're not. You're either going to do well or you're going to starve.
Yeah, and also, I think a lot of companies have set up their sales team where you're nothing but a cog in the wheel. You're not a real salesman. You're just following a script where they can replace you with a guy in India, or as long as the guy in India speaks English, or the Philippines and their call centers. PayPal. Good luck talking to somebody in the United States in PayPal. They're all in Manila.
Yeah, no, there's a certain amount of truth to that.
So I will say that everybody is, and this is a difficult. And when I say everybody, obviously, I'm talking the majority of people. Everybody should learn how to trade, and it's not for the faint of heart. And it takes time, and it's painful, and it takes a lot of work. But the bottom line is as the reason I got into it, and for years I was badgering Dan to get into it, and Dan resisted me for 2-3 years. Dan would blow me off, and he finally came around, and I still badger him with learning certain techniques that I think he should be incorporating. For example, I just want to finish one thought before I do another. So when you set up a certain trade, you can hedge it in such a way that it limits your loss instead of taking the full risk. And when you start trading, your attitude is, I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to the moon. When the reality is you're going to lose $1 million. And maybe you should go into the trade thinking, how can I limit my losses, limit my exposure while still having upside, rather than thinking, I'm going to be right. So why do I want to hedge and lose a percentage when I'm just giving back profits? When reality versus non-reality. So
it's a good point.
So the reality is, every day that goes by, I get older, I get weaker. I mean, I don't care if you go to the gym or if you have great genes. All of us.
Actually, the opposite for me. I get smarter and more handsome.
There you go. Dan's the exception. I'm the rule. I get weaker. I get older. I get less efficient.
Stuffing pepperoni pizza in my face.
Yeah, there you go. Hasn't caught up to him yet. But the point I'm making is at 60 years old, I don't want to be forced to go out and dig ditches. I don't even want to be forced to go and be a Walmart greeter. Right?
Yeah,
or to get in a car.
That's the whole paradigm now, which is not funny. It really is. You see these 74-year-old guys with an effing smock on greeting you, and you could tell on their face that they don't want to be there, most of them. How could you give somebody like that trouble? The poor bastard, he's 74. He doesn't want to be standing around in Walmart wearing the extra thick rubber sole shoes because he's standing there all day.
So if you bought 1,000 shares of Apple or Nvidia or Tesla, and you're just letting it sit there, you're a fool. And what I mean by that is you're ignorant to what's going to is you need to be making money on that money, and just letting it sit there hoping it appreciates. You need to be able to trade options and be able to earn money on that money. Otherwise, it's not worth putting your money there. Because assuming that Apple is going to keep going up and assuming that the dividend is always going to be there, I think it's a mistake. Yeah, it's worked. It's worked. But like they say, the past is no guarantee of the future.
The thing I would say is if you bought Microsoft and Apple in 2010 and you're still sitting on it, you made an absolute killing. But these days, to his point, the buy and hold, actually, since the fall of 2022, when there was a huge correction, I mean, the NVIDIAs, the Metas, the Microsofts, they have doubled, tripled, and quadrupled, actually. So everything's cyclical.
It's a moment in time is what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is what they'll say is over the history of the S&P, if you look back at the last 40 years, we've had huge dips. We've had huge dips, but it averages 10% a year. So put your money in and forget about it. I'm saying that I think those days are gone. I really do.
Well, the problem is too, even if you are getting 8 or 10%, you're still behind now. That's the problem.
Your
cost of living is outpacing you, and you're still being. People don't get it that you're being. There's two forms of taxation. There's the direct taxes that you pay every year, the $5 trillion that we're paying currently. Oh, by the way, Biden wants another $5 trillion come his 2025 budget. So what does that mean? We're going from 5 trillion aggregate to 10 trillion. So our taxes effectively are going to double. The average bear is freaking broke living paycheck to paycheck already, and he's going to double taxes, really? So
yeah, and I think that's why all the young people have jumped into crypto, because I think they realized it was almost a necessity.
I agree with them. I applaud them for that, because they realized that the cost of living and stuff, I mean, you got to make 20, 30, 50% or get
that attitude, as we talked about, that attitude has now come into the Nvidias and the Apples. Now stocks are expected to earn 10% a month. I mean, it's a joke. Yeah. Even the indices, some of these indices in May made 10%, or April.
Well, so you say it's a joke, but on the other hand, I'm grateful
joke means it's not sustainable.
Because if you're trading, to Dave's point, and I got to go now, this is why you want to get into trading, because with that kind of movement, it presents opportunity if you're trading correctly.
Yeah, you can trade up or down.
Yeah.
So, all right, Dan, I'll give you the final word. So as far as the MUX trade, or you're not hedging it, even though I've told you to hedge it. Especially, you should look at hedging now. And this is the other thing with the options, because the price is gone. So you might be able to get a cheap hedge now for like a penny or 2 pennies. Whereas if the worst, and with trading, you always have to be thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? What if this goes against me? True. I mean, do you want to hold that thing when it loses $4 a share, or do you want to pay 5 cents and have a max cap of losing $1? To me, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer.
So to hedge it, if I sold a put on it, I need to buy a call, you think?
No, you buy. There's a couple ways you can do it. Typically, what you would do.
A put. Sorry, a put.
You would buy a put.
Yeah,
and this is the thing. It depends on the price of things. And with certain stocks, this is why when you trade, if you trade like certain indices or stocks that have a lot of volume, a lot of liquidity, you can buy options with a lot of strikes and what's called a very narrow spread. Whereas with MUX, the market makers, and with like the EXK I talked about, the market makers give you a choice of like, okay, you've got 10 cents between this, or $1 between this, or $5. So you may not have a lot of option choices to choose from. And so that increases the danger of making that trade. And this is the whole thing. This is why a lot of traders, as we've talked about, Dan, a lot of traders, when they've flopped around the markets for a few years, they just start trading S&P, or they trade oil, or they trade something that has so much liquidity that they know that they're not going to be exercised, number one, if they have an out of the money trade. And they know that they can buy an option out of the money at a very narrow spread. So it makes it easier to make these trades and protect yourself. Whereas the MUX trade, they might want $1 from you to hedge yourself. And it makes it all of a sudden not a valuable trade. So these are things you have to think of when you go into this. And these are the parts of being a trader. And
that's true. It's like chess. The further you can think ahead, the better.
Yeah, it's all a game. It's a numbers game. And so that's what I will end it with. I would say to Dan, with that price at 11 something, and I should have called up, you might get a $9 and $8 hedge. And the thing is, you can always go in now, and as it decays, you can always step it up. But spending 5 cents, if you collect $1 and you spend 5 cents as a hedge, I'd say that's a wise investment. Wise hedge.
I'll look at that. Well
yep.
said.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And that's why I dumped the EXK shares, because do I think that EXK could go to $5? Yeah, I think it could, but I also think that the powers that be next week could push silver down, and now it goes back to $250. So I took the money. And now I'll redeploy that capital somewhere else.
Yeah.
And this is where, for most of us have to do something to generate income, to generate money to live. Most of us. Some of us don't. And so you either have to go to a job, you have to start a business, you have to trade, you have to do something to generate income. And if there were free lunches out there, and of course you could also become a migrant, and the point is you have to figure out what you're going to do.
I'm waiting for UBI.
Yep. And so trading, like anything, you don't put all your eggs in your basket, but everybody should learn how to trade, take X amount of your income, and start learning this.
Absolutely.
Even take classes, pay for the money to learn from somebody who knows. So you don't, because you're going to pay in the market one way or the other. You're going to pay by losing, or you're going to pay by education. So
get educated. That's the final word.
Get educated. And don't let fear, do not let fear guide your future. That is the most important lesson. Or ignorance. Fear and ignorance are the worst enemies we have. So always be learning to expand and say, what if I'm wrong? What's my exposure?
It's true. That's the
all right, amigo.
Word. You got it.
Live long and prosper.